Good evening, everyone. On behalf of the LebNet Canada and Desautels, welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us today on this webinar. My name is Fadi Joseph. I'm the president of LebNet Canada. In a few words, let me introduce you LebNet Canada. LebNet Canada is a non-profit organization with a mission to create diaspora network of Lebanese Canadian professionals. The goal of the organization is to provide mentorship, coaching, business and entrepreneurship, training, as well as networking event and talks like today. We have series of webinars other than today one. I invite you to register for the LebNet webinar. For example, this week we will have something is outsourcing technical job to Lebanon still a valid option. What we are trying is to help Lebanon with what we call subcontracting and having some job outside Lebanon. So it happened on the 6th of June, 2020, from 11 a.m. to 12 a.m. Eastern time. And we have a second one, which is on 25th of June, is about the 5G, why, what, when, and how. Please feel free to join us. I would like to introduce you to our MC tonight, which is Rania Afiouni Monla. Rania is a part of the CEO of the LebNet, and we are happy to have you with us. Rania has over than 20 years of experience, half in the IT and entrepreneurship, and half in academia, most of which at AUB and LAU. Currently, Rania is pursuing a PhD in management at McGill University. She's been awarded a doctorate of fellowship by Social Science and Humanity Research Council of Canada. Her research focus on the influence of AI on job as well as trust in AI. Thank you, everybody, and stay safe and hope soon to see you face to face. Rania, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Fadi, for the introduction. Good evening to those joining us here in North America, and welcome to everyone from around the world. For the next hour or so, we will be discussing online protection and collaboration for businesses during COVID-19. I believe the mere fact that you're participating with us shows that you realize both the relevance and the timeliness of this topic. There's actually a Russian revolutionary quote that describes what we're going through, but don't worry, I'll say it in English. There are decades where nothing happens, and there are weeks where decades happen. And this is exactly where we are now. In the past few weeks, decades happened. And one of the most impactful things that happened on the business side was the swift and massive move to remote working. To give you a quantitative idea, in the US, 1/6 of work was done remotely pre-COVID. And now we have reached over 50%. So as you can see, I mean, it's a huge change. In normal circumstances, businesses and their IT take time to adapt to change. Not now. And this accelerated adaptation comes with its own challenges and risks. So businesses have to deploy not only technical, but also all kinds of resources from human to social, educational, you name it. And this to ensure proper collaboration, all the while maintaining a secure and reliable cyber environment. So to shed light on this issue of collaboration and security, how we can achieve both, and what are the risks involved, we have with us 4 leading experts who I will present to you in a moment. But first, let me go with you through some logistics for today's webinar. I will share my screen so that you can follow with me. Please join the audio via computer. It's highly recommended, and put Zoom window in full screen mode. Adjust presentation to fit to window. All of you will be muted when entering the webinar. And if you have any issues with logistics, please, you can chat privately with Fadi Joseph. He will help you with that. Every speaker will present for about 8 minutes, and then we will have a panel discussion. I strongly encourage you to engage in the discussion. The speakers will be very happy to answer your questions. I'm sure I speak for them. They're muted now, but I speak for them. And for this, what you need to do is you type your question in the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen. The questions will be moderated, and select questions will be asked at the end of the talks. We will do our best to answer as many questions as time permits. Please note that this session will be recorded, and we're also live streaming on YouTube at LebNet's channel. So without further ado, I will present to you very quickly the four speakers, and then I will present in more detail each one as they start. So we have with us Raymond Lahoud, Managing Director at FTI Consulting, Joe Abi Daoud, VP Information Technology at Weston Foods, Maher Tabbara, Manager of Infrastructure Evolution and Services at Intact, and Fred Wardini, Executive Partner at Secure 01. Let me start with our first speaker, Joe Abi Daoud. Joe is a senior IT executive with over 20 years experience in the field of technology. He served in leadership roles and worked in several industries, including banking, telecommunications, outsourcing, retail energy, and mining. He recently completed an MS in technology management from Laurier University and joined Yamana Gold as their head of IT, leading the development of the innovation program. Joe, the floor, actually the screen is yours. There is no floor now. So I will mute myself and you can go ahead.
Thank you, Rania. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today on this very important webinar that's going to hopefully enlighten many of us about what we can expect life to be like after COVID-19, especially in the workplace. First, I'm going to talk about some obvious trends that probably everybody's familiar with. And then I'm also going to probably share with you a few things that you may not feel are so obvious. For starters, with these new challenges comes new opportunity. We know that there are many business leaders now reconsidering office space and how they're utilizing office space. There is going to be, we already know because we hear business leaders talking about it quite frequently, a shrinkage of what we call corporate real estate. This means that as the knowledge workers and many other types of work are being done more remotely, there's not going to be a need for as much office space as many corporations currently have. And so that's going to transform probably the commercial real estate business, but definitely the office space environment. The other interesting trend that's already occurred and comes with its own set of challenges is that the home has become part of the corporate network more so than ever. The home internet connection is probably one of the most valuable assets now people have in their homes. And unfortunately for organizations, the IT departments can't control that home internet connection. We can't control your provider. We can't control the quality of service that's being delivered to the home. And with that presents a whole set of challenges in trying to support our employees as they work remotely. The other interesting thing that I believe, and what I'm hearing about when I'm looking at some of the innovation that's popping up in the industries, is there's going to be a significant amount of innovation around virtual technology and wearable technology to improve collaboration, to improve the way we connect. As you can see today, we're connecting through Zoom. And as most of you probably know, video conferencing is a very one-dimensional interaction. And there has been a lot of discussion and a lot of talk about how we can elevate that experience. And I think we're going to see a lot of innovations emerge. The other interesting thing that leaders are starting to ask is, as I search and seek for talent, do I really need to be concerned with geography in this new world? You know, the notion of borderless talent acquisition strategies is starting to emerge. Do I really need, if my corporate headquarters is in Toronto, for example, do I really need to hire people in Toronto if the role is very much a permanent work from home role? And that's a question that organizations will have to ask themselves. There is the notion, or the debate, I should say, around what this is going to do to productivity. We believe in general that over time, productivity will actually increase. One of the positive benefits of working remotely, and I say working remotely and not necessarily during the crisis, because during the crisis, there's many things that have been shut down. But as those things begin to emerge, as schools begin to open up and kids go back to school and people have a little bit more freedoms, working remotely is going to come with a tremendous amount of health benefits, especially mental health. And it's going to come with the elimination of waste, specifically time waste. Anybody who has had to commute an hour each way to work is going to save a significant amount of time. That's going to not just increase productivity in the workplace, it's going to also increase productivity in your personal lives. And the one thing that we really don't know what's going to happen, but we know it's going to come, is that the governments all over the world are going to introduce new laws and regulations, especially as we begin to blur, the private life of individuals with their corporate life. The saying that work is going to follow you home is no longer a saying. Work now is part of the home. And that's going to have some interesting implications on things like taxation and tax rules and human resource policies and things of that nature. Last but not least, cybersecurity is going to have to go through a tremendous evolution. No more can cybersecurity be dependent on the corporate network. Cybersecurity defenses and capabilities now are going to have to shift into this mobile always model, which means the protection that's afforded to you when you're sitting inside the corporate firewall or you're sitting inside the corporate network is going to have to follow you everywhere you go, because we're going to live in a world where we're going to just work from wherever we want. And those are the 7 things that I think, or I'm seeing at least now and in the near future, that are going to be new challenges, but I also believe that there are new opportunities. Thank you, Rania. Back to you.
Thank you, Joe, for giving us this very balanced vision of the future between innovations we look forward to and also technical, legal, managerial challenges. Thanks a lot. So now before I move to the next speaker, let me just tell you a quick note that I will be presenting you with poll questions as we go between the different speeches. And I strongly encourage you to answer these questions, and our speakers will comment on them during the panel discussion at the end. George, can we have the first poll question? So we're asking you here, how satisfied are you with the services of telecom companies as they responded to COVID-19? You can answer on a scale of 1 to 5, from extremely dissatisfied to extremely satisfied. Now I will present to you our second speaker, Maher Tabbara. With over 13 years of experience in the IT and telecommunication industry, Maher has occupied several roles in operations, delivery, and crisis management in major telecom service providers and IT service providers. Currently, Maher occupies the role of manager, infrastructure, services, and evolution at Intact within the end-user computing, UCNC, and productivity organization. Maher, we're listening to you.
Thank you, Rania, and good day, everyone, and thank you again for the introduction. First of all, I would like to thank LebNet, Fadi, Fred, and George for giving me the opportunity to be part of this webinar. Today, I'm here to talk about our experience at Intact Financial Corporation with the COVID-19 pandemic and how we faced the first couple of weeks attempting to ensure business continuity for the whole enterprise from an IT perspective. So, for the one who doesn't know or are not familiar with Intact, I just want to give and provide a quick overview of the company. Intact is actually the largest provider of property and casualty insurance in Canada and is a leading provider of specialty insurance in North America with over 10 billion in total annual premiums. And just to put in context, Intact has around 14,000 employees across North America. And next slide, please. So everything started the week of March 9th, when the World Health Organization declared the COVID-19 outbreak a pandemic. Intact started requesting the employee to stay at home. As you can see from this high-level timeline, IT has the luxury of 1 week in order to set up our environment and ensure business continuity for 11,000 employees to work from home. With a couple more days, we had 90% of our workforce working from home, or 13,000 across America. How did we do that? Next slide, please. So first of all, leaders' alignment and collaboration can be dramatically reducing the time to value. So for that, from a business and IT collaboration, the alignment leader had to be agile and be part of several task forces setting up business continuity plans, and defining their requirement through quick surveys across the company with the help of different IT departments. Next slide, please. From an IT task force perspective, the different teams, and I mean by different teams, the different infrastructure teams, quickly set up daily Scrum meetings in order to elaborate and put in place the required infrastructure to support the business requirement. And all this, again, it is 1 week time lapse. Continuously, they had to evaluate the capacity project and plan the new capacity while monitoring, stabilizing, and securing the collaboration and remote solution in place. Eventually, to make it happen, the acceleration of the deployment of security and collaboration projects planned prior to the pandemic was imminent. Next slide. In numbers, we were able to move more than double the capacity of our VPN infrastructure to accommodate more than 6,500 remote users. We doubled our virtual presentation sessions, and we significantly increased the remote PC sessions. On another hand, as an insurance company, of course, we rely on contact center call. So we were able to maintain our usual call flow and accommodate more than 2,500 agents to work from home using a remote voice redirection in order to ensure voice quality. We had more than 60,000 calls on a daily basis across our contact center. This number reflects there was a huge efforts in order to reach this milestone. Next slide, please. So how we reached that? Many factors contributed to the success of this Blitz deployment. And I called it Blitz because it was like, as I mentioned, 1 week we were put to the challenge. So from my perspective, I believe that the key success factors are basically the cloud collaboration platform that were already in place before the pandemic. And by collaboration platform is everything providing the audio, video, chat, and email. So this is a scalable. So scalability is really a key here when we say cloud collaboration and IaaS, or infrastructure as a service. Adoption of the work from home already in place since 2 years. So as an Intact, we had one of our priority as well to accommodate and the engagement of our employees. So we started already with a plan for work from home. And this helped us greatly in order to assess the requirement and to understand the roadblocks that we might encounter. Innovation and creativity, this is key. Innovation and creativity allowed us basically to put in place new infrastructure within a few days, monitor it, and roll it back to the in production. We thought outside the box. So this is a key success factor. Leadership and agility. And what I mean by leadership and agility, leadership is basically crisis management. As leaders, as multiple business units are in the same boat, the leadership was required here in order to take quick decisions, be agile, be innovative, and take quickly decisions. We didn't have time to lose. We had the company to roll. Availability of crisis fund. Let me tell you, in a couple of weeks, as a financial company, we spend what we could spend for many quarters. So in order to put in place an infrastructure to support 13,000 user or employee from home, you need to have an available crisis fund. This you cannot turn over. Change management, adoption of the new tools, user experience, and support through task force. This is the key. It's agility again, it's Scrum, it's how we approach, how we work closely with the business. So you need to work closely with the business. You need to understand, you have to do Scrums, you have to roll back your sprints. It is agile, right? You need to apply it. And this is a key success factor here. And finally, I believe and I trust in in-source ID talent. Why? Because we get the engagement of our team. We get the engagement of our employee to provide the best of them. They knew our environment. They knew bits and bytes of how we operate our infrastructure, and they applied what they couldn't apply maybe in years because they had the green light to do it, and their dedication, and best of all, the way how they communicate. So this is how we faced it, and this is how I see the key success factor in this. Thank you very much, Rania, back to you.
Thank you, Maher. Thank you for walking us through the way Intact responded to this disruption. So much change in so little time, Mahek.
Exactly.
So now I'm going to present you with your second question for the audience, please. We're asking you, what is, in your opinion, the top challenge for collaboration and communication when working remotely? George, can we have the second poll question, please? No, the second one. This is the first one. Thank you. So I'll give you a few seconds to look at the answers, and I will also present our third speaker, Frederick Wardini. Frederick is a management consultant and serial entrepreneur with over 18 years of combined experience in developing business strategic initiatives, transforming organizational processes, and delivering integrated business solutions with people in mind. He has helped financial, government, and retail multinational organizations that are refocusing efforts on client centricity and digital transformation. Frederick has joined Secure 01 as an executive partner in 2017 to develop its cybersecurity strategic plan and design its practice. Fred, we're ready for you.
Thank you, Rania, for the intro, and thank you all for taking the time out of your busy schedule to attend our webinar. I'd like to start by giving you a little intro of our company. Secure 01 is a managed security service provider for small and medium businesses that was founded in 2014. Since its creation, the vision of this company has been oriented around cybersecurity. The mission from the start was to raise awareness, warn our clients of security threats, and provide protection and business continuity plans in the event of unforeseen risks. So let's jump into talking about the impact of COVID on small businesses, because this is exactly where our niche is. COVID-19 is an extremely negative, rare event. It's the black swan event, at least for SMBs, which basically means an event that is unpredictable and has a widespread ramification. And it's only after the fact that we typically say, oh, we should have known that this would have happened. Bill Gates followers most probably will argue against what I'm saying regarding COVID global impact being unpredictable. So for Secure 01, asking a small business to spend resources on developing a business continuity and disaster recovery plan before COVID-19, it's like asking the airline industry before 9/11 to spend a significant budget on securing flight decks with bulletproof doors. So the very few SMB for whom we've developed the BCDR plan were fairly ready and were able to execute the plan rapidly and get on their feet basically quicker than the rest within a couple of days. So it allows them to resume operations in a secure fashion and better prepare to tackle complex challenges in the new environment. However, for those who didn't have a plan, we had to assist our clients in a reactive mode. We deployed quick solutions with basic security functions, only to be revised later when operations were resumed. For example, we moved things into the infrastructure to the cloud in an urgent matter. We used personal computers, all of which with minimal integration testing and without addressing most security risks. On the other hand, the employees were unprepared to work from home from within the small business community. They didn't know how to use necessarily all the collaborative tools that were already available for them before COVID, but never used. We deployed solutions that were temporary and throwaway, which is a significant impact on company finances, especially in these circumstances. We had to work closely with our clients to develop an online collaboration strategy and the appropriate cybersecurity roadmap. So In the last 3 months, I would say small business leaders felt like they were running a sprint combined with a marathon, all in one run. It's not that they had issues with making or taking decisions. The challenge for them was really managing the transition. So it was moving from old ways of doing things to new ways of doing business. We made 3 important observations for our small business clients. Forbes recently published an average of 100 operational hours lost related directly to technology limitations, just between March 15 and April 15. Although some of these internal IT limitations were already known, it was still manageable before COVID-19. However, when the pandemic hit in March, the issue were amplified and proved to be costly. So those who already relied on IT managed providers absorbed the impact better compared to those who did not, and ended up struggling to cope and carry the whole burden on their own. As you know, also the small businesses are a prime target for cybersecurity attacks, as they are often lack the resources or expertise to protect themselves from threats, and are considered to be soft targets. So this typically happens through phishing emails disguised as bills, as invoices, or package delivery notifications. So in a COVID environment, when most are working remotely outside of the business network, hackers are very busy targeting and attacking remote employees, asking small businesses for ransomware, and provoke persistent threats. So I really believe that there has never been a more critical time for small businesses to implement comprehensive cybersecurity policies and procedures in order to protect themselves and employees from failing victims. On the other hand, we noticed as well that the digital maturity level of small businesses had a direct correlation with the ability to overcome or not the COVID impact. Businesses that predominantly relied on conventional method to conduct their business rather than adopting digital capabilities, well, they found themselves unable to serve their clients and maintain an efficient relationship with their suppliers. This resulted in an inability to fulfill their orders, to provide services, and send or receive payments in a secure, reliable, and effective way. However, like when we look at companies like Indigo that sells books and musics, which has had a substantial e-commerce presence, though most of its business still came from in-store purchases. However, it's during COVID-19 that its online sales really more than 300% increase from the moment the physical stores closed. So this is the type of business that actually was able to switch from one channel to the other and prove that they were able to sustain and continue operations. So the next thing is, where do we go from here? The need for physical location will be reduced, as Joe said. So my prediction is that 70% of users will adopt permanently collaboration tools and cloud solutions, which will increase the demand for cloud and network solution as a service. And in consequence, this will trigger the need for security as a service twice as much to conventional on-premise security. I also believe that business continuity and disaster recovery plan at small business level will definitely increase and become standardized. It's going to be a must-have, not for compliant reasons, but more for survival reasons. I think this will be one of the lessons learned from COVID for small business owners. Finally, I believe one last thing, that the bring your own device debate will be revived. However, personal privacy will be the main challenge to resolve. All right, thanks for listening, and back to you, Rania.
Thank you, Fred. Thank you for giving us this very clear understanding of what small businesses are going through. Of course, their challenges are very different from those of large corporations. I hope we have the chance to discuss this later and in more detail in the panel. Can we have the third poll question, for, third and last actually, poll question for the audience. Twitter has allowed employees who prefer remote work to continue doing so indefinitely. How likely do you see that happening on a large scale? So you can rate it from 1, which is not likely at all, up to 5, very, very likely. Our last speaker, last but not least, is Raymond Lahoud. He's a managing director at FTI Consulting based in Toronto. He is a member of the telecom, media, and technology practice. He has over 20 years of experience in the telecom industry and held many senior executive roles in business, operation, network, and IT disciplines. And most recently, prior to FTI, he was the COO of Allstream, a seasoned business and technology executive with a proven track record of leading organizations through new strategies, mergers, and acquisitions. Ray, we are listening to you.
Thank you, Rania, and thank you all for joining us this evening. Today, I'm going to switch the topic a little bit and talk about telecommunication, because a lot of us, we know that telecommunication is core part of collaboration. But before we get into the details on that, I want to maybe step back, take a look at the big picture. Over the last few years, there is a lot of adoption to cloud-based services. And this is where from collaboration to cloud-based services and other application in the cloud, which is interesting enough, the telecommunication provider, they start feeling the kind of not being part of the core of the business. What COVID-19 brought to the table and made the telecommunication industry as core backcore to the business because of the reliance on connectivities and infrastructure to deliver the services. So when we step back and think about it, we've seen COVID-19 is kind of accelerate the move to the cloud, but also highlighted the importance of the network and the connectivity underneath that environment. Some of the large collaboration systems in the marketplace, like Teams from Microsoft, it's almost doubled its the size of the active participant in the month of March and April. In 2 months, it's kind of doubled that. So you could imagine the pressure on the network, on the connectivity that's coming from a lot of us working remotely and trying to deliver services. What other things has happened is a lot of conferences, travel has been canceled. As a result of it, what happened? A lot more conferences online, like similar to the webinar that we do today. And I could tell you during my day, I'm at least in 10 to 15 webinar every day, and I'm very positive to say a lot of everybody in the industry in that situation. So again, this is where collaboration is becoming the adoption of collaboration. The technology has been there for a while, but the adoption has increased dramatically over the last little while. We talk about Zoom, we talk about Teams, but let's talk about Zoom, which is technology we're using right now. They actually increased in the month of April by 50% alone, and that the reason behind it, despite the fact there is some security concern around some of their application, even with that, we're still seeing a tremendous increase in usage, and all of this translate to pressure on the network. The different dynamic in here, and Joe touched on that earlier. Some of the dynamic here is actually the home become part of the business. In the past has always been, working from home was only kind of is the exception, not the rules. But with the COVID-19 becoming kind of everybody got to work from home, and as Maher highlighted, there's a lot of tremendous effort was put in the businesses to enable that. But at the same time, you have to think about the telcos. They were how well they were prepared. I was intrigued to hear from you in the section line with my experience is about 75% of the from the vote here highlighted that they were satisfied, 4 and 5, which is satisfied and extremely satisfied with the reaction of the telcos, which is was definitely interesting to hear, to see that, and it's in line with what the whole market reporting, but that didn't come without a lot of work on the telco side. Rania, next slide, please. So one of the other thing behind it, telco took at, like everything else, there's always opportunity. Even in a challenging time like this, there's opportunities. What the telco did through that process is try to do, to take opportunity to drive to better customer experience, to stay on top of all this capacity need they need to do to minimize the impact or make it seamless to the customers like us that using the technology, that on the connectivity perspective, but also they use this opportunity to increase their brand recognition and also help out through the process. They've done a lot of, remove some overage and fees from home internet. They have flexible payment options. They waive some long distance and also they have suspended any disconnect in those. And this is definitely a good opportunity, as I said, for the telco to connect with the communities and also and help out in this situation and drive brand recognition. And I see here almost every large telco have done that last little while. Next slide, Rania, please. So what telco could do, and we talked about SMB, we talked about larger enterprise, we talked about the market is changing. The dynamic of the market changing is actually it's a more application-based environment, a cloud-based application environment going forward. We all work in the industry, and like if we're using Salesforce, it's in the cloud. If we're using Teams or Zoom's in the cloud. So there is a huge opportunity for the telcos to evolve themselves and actually recognize the fact that the market is more application to application right now, and user to application, and enable some security, enable some reliable services, leveraging new technology, and try to change the whole way we do business and monitor using different monitoring tools, because right now it's no longer for an enterprise to monitor between the branch and their head office. They're really about monitoring between the user and the application. And this applications, as we said before, it's in the cloud. And it's actually not one cloud, there's multiple cloud. We'll talk about Azure, AWS, and everything else. So there is an opportunity for the telcos to be that trusted partners. They have the ability to productize it and make it available to the market. Technology is there, like we highlighted a little bit about SD-WAN, is really give you that opportunity to secure and services all the way from your CPE devices to the cloud. And also there's a new technologies coming here that allow you to even take what they call it untrusted devices and secure it over the SD-WAN platform. So there is a lot of evolution here. There's a large opportunity for telco to evolve themselves from just being the connectivity player to become a connectivity player in the new world of cloud environment. Next slide, please. So one of the other things behind it is, is it all nice and rosy to the telco industry? It's not. In the short term, right now, maybe a lot of people upgraded their services to higher plan. There's more people using their cell phone because they're or other technology that the telco provides to the user, especially because of the shift toward the home and an increase of that. But that's in the short term. On the long term, telcos still face the same challenge. Is there a lot of their service to become commodity, and what that means is they need to drive to a cheaper price, more cost effective, more competitive. So in order to do that, they need to rethink their model. They need to create a more flexible, resilient business model. But as I highlighted in the previous slide, there is a new technology that allow them to take their business to another level and continue that being an important part of the supply chain going forward to the marketplace. So to summarize, there's a lot of challenges happening, but there's a lot of opportunities for telcos. They definitely have have stepped up and deliver on the reliability and the capacity they need to deliver through the COVID-19, and they made it seamless in most cases for the users, regardless if it is a business user working from home or student studying from home. So this is where we maybe I'll wrap up here and hand it back to you, Rania, so we could move to the next phase. Thank you all for listening.
Well, thank you all for really very insightful and informative presentations. You have definitely triggered our curiosity, mine and the audiences. So with that, I will unshare the screen, and I'm looking forward to the Q&A session. So let's start. Okay. So many things that I would like to discuss with you, but let me start with you, Maher. This acceleration of remote work with COVID-19, it's just one dimension of a much larger scope acceleration, which is the acceleration of digital transformations. And it has started, but we're definitely still at the beginning of a long path that will surely extend in the future. So how do you think COVID-19 will accelerate digital transformations?
Thank you, Rania. So very interesting question. Actually, what happened that in time of crisis, uncertainty, it is very easy and appealing for organization to cut on IT budgets in order to preserve capital. But history has showed us that companies who took cost containment measures to preserve capital during previous crises and cut on evolution project later lost ground to companies who took strategic future focuses investment approach when the global economy rebounded. So I truly believe that it is extremely important for organization to seize the opportunity during this period and create high value, high impact, accelerated digital transformation projects in order to emerge from this pandemic more competitive. And this is the goal, and should be the goal for every CEO or CIO in any organization. But in order to consider these transformational projects, we know that we need to look at these projects and prioritize them based on different perspectives. And different lenses, if you want, how I see it. First of all, you need to assess your digital transformation project from a business impact perspective. You need to see how it aligns actually with your values, your strategic objectives, and prioritized based on the business impact, right? Of course, with the pandemic, people working from home, the second lenses or perspective that you need to look at it is basically the risk and compliance. So security is mainly very important. So you need to work on transforming your digital and security infrastructure in order to ensure that the next coming months and once you're gonna emerge and go out from this crisis, you are well armed for this. Finally, and not lately, financial. So with the pandemic, with all this economic situation, we are seeing a kind of recession that might occur. So you need to manage your finances. You need to balance between your capex and your opex and see how it ramps up and evaluate your direct and indirect financial impact. Also, you have to look at it from a cultural, from a process, from your people. What is your culture? What is the value of your company, and how you're going to prioritize them? If, let's say, you want to get the engagement of your customer, you have to work on digital transformation based on this requirement, like especially in insurtech or insurance or financial, you need to focus on the trends. And during this period, you have to accelerate your big data, machine learning, your software as a service, your cloud expansion. You have to look at the IoT, the digital, the robo-advisory, the real-time authentication to prevent fraud. Now that people are working, you need to focus on digital transformation regarding the monitoring of your agents and your employee to provide value, high impact, high value, right? This is what we need to concentrate on during this period, is really to work like ants in the background and deliver this value once we rebound from this economic situation.
Thank you, Maher. Actually, I'm listening to you and I'm looking at Fred, because I'm I'm sure that everything you have described is much more challenging for SMBs than it is for large organizations, especially that there's a lot of investment, as you said, and a lot of financial work to be done. So anyway, we'll discuss that later on with Fred. But Ray, you heard Maher. All these transformations are hungry for telecom services, right? So let's take a look at our first poll questions that we asked the audience. Let me see if I can have access to it. Otherwise, maybe, George, I don't have access to it. Can you please just show us the results of the poll? The first one, the telecom question. So that,
no, something went wrong.
Yeah,
I
because
remember
we asked it again, and then yes, because there must be something about that.
Yeah.
But I remember it was mostly in the satisfied, right?
So the last 4 and 5, and I took a note when the last time we saw this, it was 4 and 5 add up to 75%.
Okay, so impressive. So people are mostly very satisfied with how telcos dealt with the COVID-19 situation. Correct. But my question here, okay, so now they're very satisfied, which means that the telco industry really responded well to this unexpected disruption. But do you think that the network in its current infrastructure can take all the additional load, whether from for now or in the near future, without compromising service quality?
So there's a multiple part of the network. So I want to talk a little bit about the core network, then I'm going to talk about what we call the access network. Because while a lot of us, we might be satisfied, but we live in an urban environment. When you start thinking about rural environment, I would say the answer will be differently than what we get from the poll here. On the core environment, the country has enough fiber and technology to drive to absorb all the bandwidth required and the capacity from COVID and others. But that's not a new phenomenon. Like the bandwidth requirement has been doubling every couple of years for last little while. So therefore, that's why the telcos have been prepared for it. But I also tell you that a lot of the telcos have exceeded all the capacity implementation for the year already in the Q1 because of the COVID. So they had to draw against all their funds to do capacity. So they will need to create some, as Maher called it, some crisis funds, and to drive to more capacity throughout the next little while. So definitely from a core perspective, knowing the amount of fiber we have in the country and the one providers, I don't see as an issue. There will definitely some extra capital required, and that will be interesting to see how that's going to translate to the fees that as a user we have to pay. So that's definitely one thing. The other areas I want to talk about the access. So a lot of urban areas in large cities, they've been the drive toward a very high access services, like the 1 gig service, the fiber-based service, and the coax, the highest level of coax, and as a result of it, a lot of us will end up calling and upgrading, and the upgrade process was very seamless because the fiber infrastructure is in place, or the latest coax technologies or the cable technology is in place to allow to drive higher bandwidth. But we do have, if we look in Canada here, and I'm positive every country in the world have the same issues, when you go to the rural areas, a lot of them actually do not have broadband services. Interesting enough, like I have a friend of mine lives less than 5 kilometers from where I live, and I live fairly central in GTA, and less than 5 kilometers from me, and they don't have broadband services. And I know if you look at the CRTC webpage, it's tremendous amount of parts of the country in size, not in population, but in size of the footprint. Is definitely they have a low broadband or no broadband services, and that's where interesting to see the reaction to that. And I know the government always have a program to drive for broadband services, but regardless, it's still a lot of community do not have the speed that we enjoy in the large cities. There's other technology in my mind definitely could come and help, which is really the 5G. If we talk about 5G, is potential an opportunity to use it as an access strategy to deliver higher bandwidth, secure services, better connectivity to a lot of, I'd call it urban areas they don't have that. So in my mind is, if we, to summarize here, is from their infrastructure, the core infrastructure definitely have the capacity, the investment is definitely required. But when you start talking to access, there is definitely a gap, and the telcos will have to figure how to get to that. And there's a lot of other drivers. So the fact people working remotely, but there's a lot of other drivers. I know we always talk about people working remotely, but there's students studying from homes as well. And I know a lot of creative telcos right now, they're providing $20 Wi-Fi LTE modems that allow the students in the rural area to be able to do the remote studying as well. Mm-hmm. So there is a lot of work to be done in that area.
Thank you. Yeah, sure, for sure. Thanks. Well, and we're all talking about the challenges of workforce displacement. So you're talking from a telecom perspective. We had all the other perspectives as well. So given, Joe, my question to you, given this new workforce displacement, what's your take, Joe, on the changes needed in infrastructure? So from an IT perspective, do you consider it a must, for example, to move to cloud? Do you see any trade-offs there?
Yeah, thank you, Rania, for that question. Yeah, there is definitely going to be impacts to IT infrastructure, both in the in the corporate environment, but also in the home, as Raymond was mentioning. With the the advancement of 5G and things like that, that's going to bring a tremendous amount of bandwidth and capacity, right, to the homes and to corporations. But to answer your question about the cloud, the cloud has been going on for 10 years now. The companies that embraced it, the companies that built their infrastructure around the cloud, were probably the ones that were less impacted by this turn of events. And what I mean by that is the cloud lent itself very well to spikes in demand, be it customer, demand coming from customers or demand coming from employees. And so when you're thinking about a pandemic and you're thinking about situations where you have to add capacity suddenly, and knowing the supply chain disruptions that occurred, it's much easier to log into your, AWS or your Azure tenant, and spin up a server versus, calling your supplier and saying, I need to buy some hardware, I need to get it put into my data center. So I think organizations that experience demand spikes, those that were already embracing the cloud probably had much lesser impact to their organization.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Well, I'll move to Fred now, because I'd like to zoom in for a moment on a category of businesses that is known to be a catalyst of change and innovation. And you, Joe, have mentioned actually that we're going to expect a lot of innovation in the near future. So, and this category of businesses is startups. So Fred, I'd love to hear your take on how COVID-19 and even beyond will affect the startup ecosystem.
Thanks, Rania. This startups, I have mixed feelings. On one hand, they're all ready and prepared to do their annual roadshows and events lined up, airline tickets purchased just to go meet prospects, investors, and suddenly all of this came to a halt. So they had to focus, on a digital way to find their way through getting in front of many prospects and investors as possible. So most incubators and accelerators that were hosting, these startups were able to provide support and expert coaching, that were initially in residence via remote working models. However, this poses a bit of a problem for startups who are working on prototyping as well as developing hardware. So in some sense, you have some startups that didn't really got impacted because they were able to still manage to go around it. But the other ones that really relied a little bit more on on premise, being in the residence, those are the ones that I'm very concerned about for now. The main risk I see at the moment is how the pandemic will impact corporate purchasing. Because of the economic and social distancing effect of COVID, it will likely take longer for startups to make the necessary contacts and cultivate, I believe, the relationship they need to build partnerships and eventually get sales. So, but on a more positive note, there will be tremendous opportunities in specific sectors for startups. For example, the upcoming explosion of the bioeconomy. COVID-19 is speeding up the bioeconomy revolution for the next 10 years. That's like, it goes without saying. We'll witness this economy materializing significant advancements in improving human health. So by developing solutions that are based on a mix of emerging technologies, including artificial intelligence, genomics, synthetic biology, digital health. Anyway, it's very inspiring for me to see that during this unprecedented crisis, the countless scientific entrepreneurs that we hear about across Quebec or across Canada, leveraging these emerging technologies and adapting their business models rapidly to find solutions to fight this pandemic. Interesting times.
Yes, and you're right. There will definitely be probably, disparities between different industries when it comes to startups. Some advantaged, some disadvantaged by the crisis. Let me share with you now the results of our second poll. If we can have the results, thank you. So, so we have two top answers for your top challenge for collaboration: staying motivated and the quality and ease of collaboration tools. So one more on the technology side and one that is more on the human side. So Maher, you mentioned that work from home. I'm asking you this question because you did mention in your presentation that work from home has already been in place at Intact since 2 years ago. So you do have experience in that even pre-COVID. Has the most difficult challenge in implementing it been technical for you? So security, maybe collaborative tools, procedures, etc., or more on the human side, as in engaging your employees, your customers, job satisfaction, turnover? So you tell us which side of the challenges was more salient at Intact?
Yeah, and I'm surprised by this poll. Actually, it is very interesting, the answers to the poll question here. Well, mainly we integrated the work from home for the main reason of engaging the our employee. So it was a question of engagement. In some cases, the commute to work was presenting a burden to our employee, and by giving them the options and opportunity to stay and work from home was clearly an advantage. I believe the main challenge back then and prior to the COVID-19 crisis was the technical solution. Okay. In fact, since each business unit had different requirements, one of the challenges was to define the different solution and based on the employee profile and functionality, and therefore we had to frame the solution in a way to keep it secure, simple, and the most important, financially attractive and appealing in order to scale it across the company. The return on investment was our employees' engagement and retention, which directly impacted our customer engagement and satisfaction. Unfortunately, back in the time, we didn't have a crisis, so it hasn't been looked at through the lens, as I mentioned in my previous digital transformation. This was not a top priority from perspective of business continuity, but now we are seeing it more important, right? So to work from home, it's a necessity. It is no longer an option or a treat, right? So this change. But now what we are seeing while we are advancing, that the challenge is not only technical, how to secure the solution, how to finance it. Now we are seeing, as the poll question is, how to keep people engaged, how to keep, mental health maintained, how we are helping our people to support and carry on. So this is becoming a new challenge. So it's phased out. Before it was a technical challenge, it's a financial challenge to convince a traditional way of doing things. But now everything flipped and it becomes a necessity.
Okay, well, interesting how that change you're saying from one phase to another shifted the focus of the challenge from technological to human. And actually with human interactions, when they're done remotely at work, we're also losing, even in terms of the work, not just the personal, as you said, the mental health and then the interaction, we're also losing some of the richness of our knowledge of the other. That other can be a customer, a partner, a company, can be any other party that the employee is dealing with. Joe, does this mean, in your opinion, that we need to increase investment in AI and analytics to better to compensate for this lack of richness in the knowledge and to understand the other better? And should we rely significantly more on new technologies given this situation?
Thanks, Rania. That's a great question. And the way I like to think about it is if we take a step back when this crisis began, the organizations or the companies that were out there producing products and services, they had their formulas for forecasting demand, right? And forecasting supply. And then to your point, a decade happened in a week, right? And then suddenly demand changed, behavior changed. The great example I like to always use, and we laugh about this in Canada, was the huge demand on toilet paper that occurred.
Yeah.
Right? And so if you're an organization and you want to make sure that you have the capability to adjust very quickly to changes, significant changes, not trends, not gradual changes, you are going to really have to embrace the power of big data, machine learning, and data analytics. Now, the pandemic model was a new model and it was unprecedented, and most companies could not have anticipated or predicted that. But now we do have some data. We do have some historical data, in terms of what happens during a pandemic. Companies now should be digesting that, using, data analytics capabilities to try to determine, in the future, if something like this was to occur, how is the demand and supply model going to change for my organization? You're not going to be able to call customers up and interact with customers like you've done in the past. You are going to have to rely on these new tools and these new capabilities.
Yeah, thank you. Well, I'll take just a couple seconds to thank you all speakers really before, but we're not done. I'm just thanking you for something in between, which is that you're answering the audience question. I'm following up on the Q&A and you're answering them as they arrive. So thank you very much for that. But I'm not letting you all go yet because we still have a few things that I'm curious about. So Fred, I'll come back to your experience with SMBs, and SMBs are considered in general, they're more vulnerable, let's say, than large organizations, whether in the finances, in the market presence, etc. But they're also known to be more agile. So they have this, they have an advantage on one side, they have a challenge on the other. And this agility is highly needed in the current crisis. So with COVID-19, do you see as a whole SMBs in a better or more difficult situation compared to larger organizations? So in comparison to large corporations?
Agility is one thing, but it will only work for those who will survive, to be honest with you. In Canada, the government and experts such as Quebec Investments and Canadian Federation for Independent Business estimate that we should be losing between 25 to 35% of our SMB in the next 18 months, because of COVID. So So the struggle is going to be real for them. Will they be able to turn around and be more agile? I think this is again going to come back to how ready were you before. To Joy's point, you know, those who already adopted cloud solutions and were able to adapt to demand and shift channels from, like, you know, like the Indigo example I just gave, being able to, you know, adapt and be able to be ready in any of these situations, those that will survive. So these survivors will have a bigger market share, in my opinion, and they'll be able to adapt faster than big corporations in the new economy. I said it before, for small businesses mentality, it's not hard for them to make decisions. So there's so many layers of management and, you know, and you know, consolidations of ideas and concise you know, direction from leaders of big organizations. The smaller ones tend to be able to, you know, quickly move around. However, unlike big corporations, what they don't have is the mean to be dealing with transitions, and that, I think that's what the real struggle will be. They'll be agile in making decisions. They'll be agile in implementing a solution quickly. But again, moving from, if they haven't really adopted that, like Maher said earlier on, like, you know, much more earlier before these crises, it will just be a little bit more difficult for them. So to me, the transition will definitely dictate whether they can or cannot become. And obviously, those who survive, yes, there was going to be big opportunities for those ones.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Fred. Can we take a look at the results of our last poll question to see about the one about remote work? So we have, well, this is impressive. A vast majority is, well, we have almost 60% between the 4 and 5. And if we add 3, 4, and 5, we have almost 90, we have 92%. It's a huge percentage that thinks that it's very likely that remote work will happen on a large scale in terms of not just the COVID crisis, but even beyond it. I think we have an audience question that relates to that. It was a question to Joe from Basim. I believe there will be new types of jobs with people working on remote. What do you think about that? So Joe, you have a question here, if you'd like to answer that.
No, I think that's a very good question, and absolutely, there's not only going to be new types of jobs, there's going to be new types of services for sure, and those new types of services will lead, obviously, to most likely to new jobs. And if you think about this whole concept of physical distancing, right, that's almost becoming a norm. There's no, I would not be surprised if, you know, new consulting services began to emerge to teach companies how to implement, you know, physical distancing procedures, but at the same time, you know, take into account, you know, employee effectiveness and employee productivity, and still allow employees to collaborate. So I see new types of consulting jobs coming forward. I see new innovations in, you know, what we call remote control. I mean, these things already exist today for in a large part, but you'll probably see an increase of companies wanting to run their factories, you know, with more remote capability, you know, run their operations, whatever they may be, with more remote capability. You know, I used to work in the mining sector, and, you know, and I used to struggle a lot with trying to convince mining executives to shift to a more autonomous type of mine operation, or semi-autonomous, where, you know, you had some operator intervention. And then we noticed during the crisis, a lot of governments around the world were forcing mining operations to shut down because they couldn't, you know, implement physical distancing protocols. But you think about teleremote operations, you think about semi-autonomous and autonomous technology that allows for things to continue to operate without human interaction. So I do definitely see a big surge in those types of technologies and jobs surrounding those types of technologies.
Thank you. Thank you. We have another question also I see in the audience here. I believe it's for you, Ray, probably. It's about the 5G. So Omar is saying, TELUS announced Ericsson and Nokia as 5G suppliers. He's saying we do have choices. Is it about something that you were discussing with him? You're muted, Ray.
Give me a second here. Yes, I think the discussion around is Huawei and what's going on with around that manufacturer. We know they're advanced and comparing to some of the other providers. I definitely look. What's interesting in the news last week, it looked like Ericsson is coming back to be the #1 provider in the country. When you think about it, is Bell has it, Rogers has it, and TELUS has Ericsson and Nokia, which is an interesting phenomenon, and a lot of it related to some of the, call it the dynamic around Huawei and things around there. So when we think about it, is one of the other question behind, do we have a choice? I don't think we do have a choice between the other manufacturers. Like Samsung is also in the market, and like everything else in technology, when you deploy it, and if they're falling behind, they will adjust, and they will adjust their plan and will deliver maybe a little bit, so I truly believe is we will have 5G in Canada. We will have a good presence. They definitely look like there's a competition between the providers to deploy the 5G. A lot of movement has been done, and if you look at Bell, to fund the 5G, they end up selling their data centers, which is the old Q9 and others, the 14 data center for $1 billion. So they're making the fund to do the 5G deployment. So hopefully that answered your question. I think was Ali or
Omar. Yeah.
Omar.
So I think I'll ask the last question now, because although I mean we could stay longer with you guys, but in the interest of time, there's a question to Fred. What is the percentage of total income an SMB must spend in IT? What do you think about this, Fred?
Yeah, I mean, it's for small SMB, you can't hit them with a big budget every year and tell them, listen, you need to spend like 10% of your revenues. Obviously, they'll fire you on the spot. But typically, our take on this, it depends on where you are in your digital adoption. So if you have small businesses that are still on the old conventional way of being, IT driven versus no, we're still going to do the things pen and paper. Well, it's going to vary, but typically what we say is 2.5% of your revenues. This is to maintain your current situation, and obviously for R&D and evolving and advancing, about 5%. This is in a regular way. I mean, this is before COVID-19. That was our speech. Now we're just going to wait a little bit before we actually, assess what is the situation with our small business clients and determine with them what's their appetite. And probably it's going to be more about developing a roadmap. They're going to be more willing now to sit down and develop a roadmap to determine what's going to be, the expenditure, whether being on, capital expenditure or operational expenditure to just maintain. And it's a question of survival now. They understand that it's not a spending, not for, nice to have. It's about, surviving if ever we get hit with half of what we've been hit with.
Thank you. I would like to thank you all, actually. First, let me start by thanking the speakers. So Maher, Fred, Joe, Ray, really thank you for a very informative session. I really hope the audience found it as interesting and as enjoyable as I did. And I'd also like to thank Noor Qadri, who hasn't participated in the the actual presenting, but who helped a lot in preparing for this webinar. Thank you to Fadi, also who started, well, you've met him at the beginning, and also thank you to George Ai, CEO of LebNet, who was hosting us on this webinar today. So I'll tell you all good evening, and thank you to the audience most importantly. Bye everyone.
Great job. Thank you all.
Great
Thank
job.
you.
Thanks.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.